Okay, today, last lecture, lecture 24, but we didn't quite finish 23, so let me just say something about greener pastures here. Some of you very much wanted to see this. Okay, very briefly, what do we do about energy? So alternatives, global advances, and off the grid. So alternative energy, you'll see this term alternative energy, which means non-fossil fuel, simply. So nukes are included as part of alternative energy in most calculations. So be careful of those kinds of numbers, because nukes obviously do not burn fossil fuel. They're quite easily fueled, but what's not easy is to get rid of the nuclear waste products. And that's the big problem, quite apart from explosions or breakdowns of the plants. You can't get rid of the old fuel rods. And we're having huge protests in Europe about that now. In Japan, in Fukushima, part of what happened in the explosions was the fuel rods, which were being kept above the reactors because they didn't know what to do with them. So, because there's nobody's gotten very safe stories. There are deep salt mines, but, we couldn't bury our own fuel rods in the deep mines in southern Nevada because of public opposition. So nukes are basically pretty dead in the water, although there are some interests that would very much like to revive them. Biomass, the word renewable you'll see, but renewable includes biomass that is taken agriculturally grown or non-agriculturally grown. It could be wood chips, it could be wood waste, it could be grasses. That's what they're experimenting on here in the new bioenergy facility, or will be soon. I guess they already are. But it also means growing a lot of corn using fossil fuels and then turning that into alcohol. And that also affects world food prices quite dramatically. So that's not a very good alternative either. Hydro seems renewable, except that then the rivers are unrenewed. And it ruins rivers, ruins fisheries, and is starting to ruin many of the rivers in Asia, as it has ruined our own. So the Three Gorges in China, the new dams on the Mekong, which will be a disaster for the Mekong Delta. What happens is, the biggest problem, there's two big problems with dams. One is they block fish migration. And secondly, they change water temperature and water regime, so fish in the lakes behind dams are not at all what grows in running rivers. But then they also block silt, and that's the nutrients and water flow and nutrient flow into deltas, which helps destroy the delta's fisheries, which are always huge. You see that here in San Francisco Bay, where our fisheries have largely collapsed. Salmon, striped bass, and pretty much everything else because of the blockage and diversion of river water. And that's the danger. But if you take something like the Brahmaputra or the Mekong, you have literally tens of millions of people who are living in the deltas. So this is a catastrophe waiting to happen. So what you get that's better is solar, wind, and wave, and geothermal. They have their own problems. Big solar panels out in the desert can be hugely land intrusive and wildlife intrusive. Well, that's what the big energy companies like to build. But at the end of the day, they're still tiny. So although they promise a lot, it's still pretty small. Now, they have grown. California was way ahead in this, going back to the 70s, because we had an energy policy. After that big blip in the energy prices in the 70s, California instituted a whole set of our roof is falling. A whole set of progressive policies about water heaters and solar installations where you could get subsidies or discounts. And it worked really well. And as a result, California, on average, uses half the energy per capita of the rest of the United States. So it shows you what just a little bit of effort does. And it isn't because we're virtuous individually or we're hip. It's because we had a policy. We had a government policy under the first Jerry Brown administration, and it worked. But then everybody forgot about it because oil prices fell in the 80s, and so the heck with that. Go back to bathing in oil. But you can see solar is growing, solar installations are growing. But this little dotted line, this is world solar. This is U.S. wind, by the way. But notice U.S. share of world solar is, if anything, declining. So the U.S. has really fallen behind. Yes?
In terms of the California policy you're speaking about, which state has more to do with any first of all, energy prices in California slightly higher than the rest of the country, but also
much better. Not slightly, much. Half.
But also that you don't have to pick up heat.
Yeah, we have air conditioning. No, that's climate's not a big part of it. I mean, that would be a big thing if you're evaluating energy use in San Francisco, say, or Berkeley. But for the whole state, no, that cancels out. I assure you. It might not be quite as bad as air conditioning in Texas, say, but it's still pretty bad. Plus, with transport, long distances, lots of goods moving, so we have a lot of extra from that. Plus, we have crappy houses that don't heat, that just blow heat out. So, but there were, local governments, state governments gave you incentives plus rules. You could not build a new house without ceiling insulation anymore. You couldn't not insulate your hot water pipes. So those are huge changes. Silicon Valley has gone solar in a big way, and as usual, seems like the only capitalists in America, given our domination by finance capital, the only finance capitalists anyway left in America who seem to be interested in production are venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. And they've gotten all kind of excited about alternative energy, especially solar, because it's solar electric. I think some of their enthusiasm has declined recently, although I just dug up this article from Greenbeat, said a record $7.8 billion for clean tech venture capital in 2010, though it did decline in late 2010. So we'll see. Global advances have been more striking in the U.S. because the U.S. under the Bush administration, but also under the Obama administration, which started out well but backed off, but under Bush, there was no energy policy at all. Bush was an oil regime. Obama was supposed to not be an oil regime, but because for various reasons we won't belabor here, he's backed off of almost everything he promised in terms of energy policy, or he's been defeated, one or the other. So you can see Germany way ahead in wind energy here. Here's the U.S. creeping along with Spain. Okay, India's coming on really strong. So we're not doing that well. Denmark is actually, in terms of per capita, Denmark's in the leadership. Spain is well ahead of us. Ireland, which is not noted for its technological lead, although it's modernized very quickly, and it doesn't have oil or anything. So the world's largest solar plant in Germany, which has some of the crappiest weather on Earth, right? It's like putting a solar plant in Seattle. You think, but solar works very well on bright, cloudy days, too. It doesn't have to have direct sun. So U.S. sucks, as usual. Actually, the newest big one, the biggest new one, bigger than Germany, is in Portugal, which makes a little more sense. Even China has put huge investments. It's got twice the investment in alternative energy that the U.S. does. They're throwing, they'll go with anything. They're extremely innovative in that sense. Their biggest triumphs have been the building of solar panels, where the reason Solyndra collapsed here was because the Chinese can produce solar panels much cheaper, because the technology isn't very sophisticated. What the venture guys in Silicon Valley are doing is trying to create even more advanced silicon films and so on. But the standard ones you can produce more cheaply in China. It's kind of the classic thing. Invented here, produce it there. And Solyndra made the mistake of trying to produce it here. Well, they also cheated and lied and so on, so that wasn't too good. So here's installed capacity of wind in China. I mean, they've really been quite good. Now, they're still, of course, the biggest burners of coal in the world and so on, so let's not get too excited. But it does show that they're thinking about this, much more creative probably than the United States as a whole. Anyway. So is India, by the way, has a lot of installed wind power. And then finally, the last point was just going off the grid. There's a movement here, has been for some time, the idea of everybody individually trying to make their house autonomous, make it independent of the grid, really pay attention to your consumption, produce what you need what you produce, use what you produce. And, there's a lot to be said for that because it does force you to really think about the whole package of production and consumption of electric power and power right there. But of course, you have to own a home to do this. Doesn't work so well for renters in apartments in Oakland, now does it? So there's that problem, but people like Emory Lovins are generally thinking of your upper middle class person. And a lot of these policies, as usual, take that as your modal American, which isn't always correct, right? But Lovins have a lot of other arguments about the problem of transmission, about failures of the grid, about actually there being almost no scale economies in power production over 1 megawatt these days. So there's a lot to be said for decentralization. Going off the grid itself is probably not a good idea because that's a typical American individualistic solution. I'll go it alone. I'll do it. It's so classic cowboy kind of Americanism. I'll have my little world. I'll be good and out with everybody else. What you really need is you need people who are doing alternative energy in their home, but are plugged into the grid so they can feed some of their surplus energy into the grid. The grid is a very sensible social infrastructure. Americans, we don't like to think that we need society, but we do. And of course, the best solution is always conservation. And indeed, here's California. This is energy use. You can see California just is the gray line here. It just fell off at 1970. See, just went flat. And here's the rest of the U.S. average is this one, which is about double California. And I sort of like this, the Republican versus the Democratic states. It's kind of amusing. We could go on and on about that, but it makes a nice political point about who loves oil and who cares about this stuff. Okay, so, and you can really do amazing things with a little policy. That's the point. It's not that hard. Okay, so that's that. And let me now go on to our lecture today, which is in here somewhere. There it is. Okay, and today I want to talk about the end of the pipe. What comes out the end? Okay, because this is the end of our semester. So today is the end of the production system. So lecture 24, waste of the world, neglected geographies. And of course, there's a fascinating geography of all this as well. And some of it's stuff we've touched on already, but I'll just be belaboring, and a few new points here and there. So keys to today, the global devastation of resource extraction is quite remarkable. And what we see over the long run is a kind of slash and burn economy on an industrial scale, which has been really devastating to more and more parts of the earth. Byproducts and end products produce waste. There's all kinds of byproducts out of production. When we finish with our goodies, we throw stuff away, and there's all kinds of waste comes to that. And the waste stream is just gigantic in a country like America, because the flow of commodities is gigantic, the flow of waste is gigantic, and there's just no getting around it. And some of that waste is just a mass of stuff. And okay, you got to put it in holes in the ground, and it's kind of ugly and junky and kind of terribly inefficient, and so on. But some of it's actually toxic or incredibly harmful, like styrofoam packing that ends up in the mid-Pacific Gyre, which I left out of here, but I'll throw it in now. And it's at all scales. The catastrophic effect of our waste. It is in you. You are the garbage dump. The world, the earth is a garbage dump, and the earth and you are both suffering for that. There are solutions. There are two kinds of solutions here. One are the kind of material solutions. How to reduce this flow of waste. How to reduce the extrusion of waste and ruination by various methods. And I'll go through those. My 3 R's, much more important than the 3 R's of reading, writing, and arithmetic, except that I had 6, so 3 R's times 2. And then economic solutions, rethinking capitalism, and I'll end on the Savio solution, since this is Berkeley. So, waste of the world. We've got 4 categories. Wastelands, that's the extraction part. Time bombs, that's the crap in you. 3, the 3 R's times 2, and 4, capitalist imperatives. Okay, wastelands. Desolation, byproducts, end of the line, and dumps. So we start with wastelands as the kind of trail of extraction that we leave behind. That everywhere there is mass extraction, as I've said before, like this bears reiterating, whether it is metals, coal, oil, wood, fish, and often even just agriculture, but I'm not going there so much today. We leave these kinds of landscapes, just massive scars on the face of the earth, which of course are not only ugly, but they've destroyed whole parts of forests or mountains, and they usually leave really vile extrusions of pollution. The single largest toxic site in America, it might surprise you to know, is Iron Mountain west of Sacramento. No, west of Redding, just west of the Shasta Dam. And it's an entire mountain that was dug in, was honeycombed for iron, copper, gold, silver, lead, zinc, and then the rain falls on it and it all oozes out. And EPA spends millions every year trying to contain this stuff. The containment dams have broken a couple of times, and guess where it goes? In the Sacramento River, where you can then drink it if you live in Sacramento. Anybody from Sacramento? Good, tasty, huh? So now you taste better. If you wonder where your body burden comes from, that's one place to start. And mining wastelands, this is actually a picture up at Iron Mountain, I believe. These are toxic, abandoned mines in the U.S. Of course, this is where there were mines, there were abandoned mines. And they make, big mine tailings and big messes. This is actually from hydraulic and dredging up on the Feather River. So whole landscapes, riverine landscapes destroyed. And you can still see it 150 years later. It looks pretty much exactly like it looked then. Oil is incredibly waste producing these kinds. We have no idea how much pollution is produced by gushers and leaks, pipe leaks. The largest oil leak in America before the Deepwater Horizon was, of course, Prudhoe Bay, right? Well, off Avila Beach in California, where Union Oil used to have its pipeline and its loading dock down there at Morro Bay, the amount of oil that was dumped at Prudhoe Bay is underground in the beach. So go frolic on that beach, enjoy your fish from Morro Bay, because it's huge, and it's oil, it's petroleum, plus they would put distillates in there to help smooth it out when it went through the pipeline over the Coast Range. This, by the way, is, I think, a picture taken, that's an older picture taken down by Bakersfield, but just go to Bakersfield and look over the Kern River at that unbelievable landscape. It's a lot tight, it's been tidied up, but nothing lives there. Timber, of course, massive slash and burn goes on. This is in the U.S. then, the U.S. now. That's pretty recent up in Oregon, and that's in tropical forest. I forget if it's Indonesia or in Amazon. And literally millions of square miles a year slaughtered for cheap wood, a lot of which goes into things like newsprint. Or if the wood products are taken, I mean, a lot of the wood products aren't even taken out because they're just cutting it down to grow soybeans, so that you vegetarian can feel virtuous when you eat soybean cake. Just so I get that in there. Don't worry, I'll attack meat eaters here. You'll be all right. I'm an equal opportunity critic. And of course, dams, this is one of those dams. I think this is on the Klamath River, and those are the dead fish in the Klamath about 5 years ago. One of the disasters. They're going to take this and a couple other dams out eventually. The Klamath salmon run totally ruined by this. And then we have our byproducts of production. Waste from industry. Once again, industry is the biggest energy user, industry is the biggest waste producer. And that's still true even though we think of ourselves as a deindustrialized country. That is still true today. Factories, and if you add transportation of goods, of course, the figure would be even bigger. 2/3 of waste is industrial. I mean, that's a very rough figure, but that's where most of the stuff is processed. That's where most of the byproducts appear. Most of the waste as air pollution, water pollution, or just junk. And it's a normal. I mean, you can't get out of it. You're going to have a lot of throughput. You're going to get a lot of waste. And of course, the geography of industrial waste is the geography of industry in America. Silicon Valley, which when I was young was called clean industry, this was clean industry, produced one of the great Superfund multi-site areas in the country. The largest multi-site contaminant, because they used to clean all their chips using cleaning fluid, which is highly toxic, things like carbon tetrachloride and can't remember now. Shoot. Well, maybe somebody else knows. What's cleaning fluid? Somebody must know. Okay, what's that hexa? That means, yeah, and it's all over California because of high-tech used a lot of these kind of cleaners, both in Southern California aerospace and Northern California electronics, plus your average cleaning joint. The cleaning had huge tanks of this stuff which leak into the ground. And so you have a lot of contaminated sites like that. Construction, you may not think of, but it produces huge amounts of waste. Not just demolition, though that too. I have a student working on demolition in Beijing, which is producing unbelievable mountains of waste. We all look at the skyscrapers of Beijing and go, wow, isn't that fantastic? But we don't think about all the old buildings that have been destroyed in Beijing, including some not so old buildings, 20-year-old buildings. And all that stuff goes into dumps out on the fringe of Beijing, 10, 20 miles out, where it's then picked over and recycled or not. So construction waste is huge. Hollywood used to produce unbelievable amounts of this kind of waste, wood, from they break sets and they just throw it away. And I actually know a guy 20 years ago about 20 years ago now, led a movement to get them to recycle the wood from when they broke sets. And so they're much better now, but there's still unbelievable amounts of stuff. And agriculture. The worst part of agriculture is, well, the two worst parts are probably feedlots, which produce unbelievable amounts of nitrates and phosphates that pollute rivers. There's not one river in Kansas, well, from Kansas to North Texas, Nebraska to North Texas, that isn't polluted by these things. Also on the East Coast, where it's more hog poop and chicken poop, and the Carolinas, it goes down to the coast. It's just catastrophic amounts. And then, of course, there's pesticides. In California, you may be happy to know, no, you probably won't, is the most intensely pesticided place on Earth, and has been for well over 50 years. Happy day for us. Go to your farmer's market and buy organic. Although they're getting better, they use less, we still have the worst. And then there's a problem. There's a great book called Living Downstream about this problem of pollution and how we all suck it up and then suffer for it. But the most dramatic case of this in the United States is the Mississippi Delta. Oh, this is the sediment going out the Mississippi. And out here, I don't know how far it goes, 50 to 100 miles out, you have algae blooms produced by fertilizers applied all over the Midwest that go into the Mississippi. Then there's the problem of the herbicides that flow down Mississippi, which then kill the algae or other living plants and produce massive die-offs, which then suffocate everything. So Louisiana has more problems than just hurricanes and flooding. And oil pollution. Yeah, this area off the mouth of the Mississippi is one of the filthiest places on Earth. And one of the problems of living in New Orleans is, and Baton Rouge and all, is that they take their drinking water out of the Mississippi, which is already, I think the average estimate is it's already gone through 2.5 intestines by the time it gets to you. Now, that'll shock you, because people love to hear about other people's poop. But it's really the refineries along the Mississippi and the industry that's the worst. So if you go to New Orleans, is probably the only place in the world I think you should drink bottled water. And then there's the end of the line, because once we consume, we buy things and consume things. We have the packaging. We love packaging. And so do retailers, because it stops thievery in their eyes. Plus, it sells things better. You can tell that you're not just getting a tube of glue. You're going to have the instructions. Everything's going to be right there. And you can't sneak out with that tiny tube of glue in your pocket, which they just love. And if they can do it, they'll make you buy 2 tubes of glue in the same well-sealed plastic package, right? Which is a nice trick. Anyway, we have lots of that. Plus, we all consume lots, and then we finish. But most of our household trash is packaging. That's the biggest thing. And it's the hardest to deal with. So let's see. Total waste generation here. Paper, 35%. Now, this is 2003, but actually paper use keeps going up despite electronics. Yard trimmings, quite substantial. Food scraps, quite substantial. A lot of food uneaten. Plastics, those are very hard to deal with, metals and so on. So amazing amounts. Actually, the paper's kind of amazing. A lot of that is wrapping, of course. And then human waste goes out of our houses, and heat waste goes out of our houses. So at the final consumer end, we produce a lot of junk, which can be reduced and has to be reduced. Our animals, there are, I think, as many pets as people now in America. I think it's close. Of course, nothing like cattle. And cattle and sheep and all, there's like 6 times as many as there are people. So, and they're a problem for global warming because of their methane farts. Gas, excuse me. But animals produce much more waste, actually much more biological waste going into, say, San Francisco Bay is from animals than from you. Because you go through treatment systems, which have been upgraded all around the bay. You go through East Bay Mud, the big poop plant down by the Bay Bridge. I actually love those things. They're fantastic. You should go visit them. Occasionally get a whiff of it as you go by.